Dumelang bakgetse ko lapeng, leina la me ke Refiloe Menoe, ke tlhaga ko organization e bidiwang Show Me Your Number. Gompieno ke tlile go sekaseka module 4 e leng gore it focuses on key and vulnerable populations. So yone e na le the following topics: vulnerability and marginalization, key and vulnerable populations and the barriers they face to rights and services, forms and effect of discriminatory laws, policies as well as practices, legal rights related to accessing healthcare, responses to rights abuses experienced by key and vulnerable populations. Vulnerability, it refers to the context and conditions that put people at high risk of HIV, TB, STIs, as well as related right abuses. So this includes location and services available, disability, societal context, as well as discriminatory laws and practices. Marginalization, which it refers to a process of social exclusion where people, based on their identity, are denied full access to rights, resources, and opportunities, which includes services, ignoring and minimizing the realities, risks, and needs of particular populations because they are seen as different to the norm, which is a key way of marginalizing people. So vulnerability and marginalization are interrelated, which means that marginalization impacts on vulnerability, while increased vulnerability impacts on the process of social exclusion. Jaanong, ha re bua ka key and vulnerable populations, go na le pharologano le foo. Ba e leng gore key populations, it refers to the group of people ba e leng gore they are most at risk of HIV, TB, STIs, and related rights violations. So these populations often face additional barriers to realizing their rights and accessing services through punitive laws as well as discriminatory laws, increasing their risk of HIV exposure and transmission. Now, vulnerable populations, it refers to the group of people who, based on their social context, often experience unequal opportunities, social exclusions, as well as unemployment that in turn make people more vulnerable of HIV, TB, and STIs exposure and transmission. So the factors underlying people's vulnerabilities may reduce their ability to prevent their exposure to HIV, TB, and STI and may be beyond their control. So this includes, among others, lack of awareness of and limited access to services as well as restrictive societal factors. Maybe okay, who are the key and vulnerable populations? Okay. So in the context of the national HIV responses, key and vulnerable populations include the following, but under the key populations, okay? So people living with HIV, sex workers, inmates, people who use drugs or inject drugs for that matter, transgender persons, gay men, MSM. So MSM refers to, or it means men having sex with men. Under vulnerable populations, we have AGYW, which is adolescent girls and young women, children, including orphans and vulnerable children, people living in informal settlements, people with disabilities, mobile and migrant populations, including undocumented migrants. Last but not least is other LGBTI community people. So you're also wondering, who are the key populations? Okay, in the context of South Africa's TB response, key populations includes the following: people living with HIV, inmates, bana ba le gore bana le 5 years go go tlase, bomme ba imileng, healthcare workers, people living in informal settlements, people with diabetes, household contacts of TB index patients, as well as minors. So all key population groups experience high levels of stigma, discrimination, violence, and other rights abuses, which creates barriers to access to healthcare and other essential services. These not only affect their overall well-being, health and rights, but also impact their decision-making power and opportunities to seek and adhere to HIV, TB, and STI treatment. So the realities, risks, and needs of key and vulnerable populations are further influenced by discriminatory laws, policies, practicing affecting their ability to make informed choices about all aspects of their laws. All key population groups experience high levels of stigma, discrimination, violence, and other rights abuses, which creates barriers to access to healthcare and other essential services. These not only affect their overall well-being, health and rights, but also impact their decision-making power and opportunities to seek and adhere to HIV, TB, and STI treatment. The realities, risks, and needs of key and vulnerable populations are further influenced by discriminatory laws, policies, and practices affecting their ability to make informed choices about all aspects of their lives, including accessing redress when their rights have been violated. This means that people's choices to seek redress at a police station, for example, are influenced by both discriminatory laws and discriminatory practices. Now we're focusing on criminalization and impunity. Criminalization in law, it refers to laws and policies that directly or indirectly discriminate against people due to belonging to a certain population group, that is sex workers, people who inject drugs, and LGBTI community plus. And then discriminatory practices. It refers to a situation whereby people are discriminated against regardless of rights protections in the law. And then impunity. It means exemption from punishment and refers to a situation where people breaking the law and violating others are not held accountable for their actions. There are steps to address criminalization, discrimination, and impunity at the different levels, and these includes individual level and community level. So now, on the individual level, or at the individual level rather, increasing human rights knowledge, speaking to friends, peers and family members about rights and the need to protect the rights of everyone. On the community level, addressing the underlying reasons for discriminatory attitudes and beliefs leading to the rights violations and, at times, impunity by raising awareness and knowledge about rights and the impacts of rights violations. So it is very important to remember that the needs of a person whose rights have been violated must be the focus of actions. In many cases, rights violations are linked to service provision, including denial of services. In such a case, the first step of action has to be ensuring the person receives the service needed, if being denied access to treatment, for example. The outcomes of this module were concept of vulnerability and marginalizations, who key and vulnerable populations are and the barriers to rights and services access, forms and effects of discriminatory laws, policies, and practices, legal rights and right-based responses relating to key and vulnerable populations. So with that being said, kindly stay tuned for the upcoming video. Thank you.
Mani vista.
Au tia mude dia iule ventia.
Nanja ya mangililanga ngilalele.
Angitshele ngisikele ke njengomaqala. Besakabona lesasimove
Nyame sekhasta.
Isi-custom.
Custom.
Yazini boy. Awuthinya uphina nyana 2 nyana 3 nyana amatayera ngiyabuya.
Ngawumi kancane wenza njani? Ayosondele wenza. So yamashishi ingudla ekho green nje yami. Phanda green ndawo chama. Ngayenzi la ile.
Kanti ni maqala.
Nyala awuchama. Asimashisi thina into ezihamba kanjani na kanjani. Hamba straight kube mnandi awuchama. Futhi ngithola ngibhizi. Chima. Chima.
Hasta pisaba.
Manje wayurasha wena. Prasida. Ako ina kanje.
Baba.
Hi man.
Mara chama pengithi nyasibuyisele.
Ubuyisela yini? Ngathi ngisafunda. Ufunani manje la? Haya hamba la. Ngisafunda. Yini inkinga yakho? No man, okokuqala wathatha i-TV yami wena. Wayodayisa. Uyabuya futhi la. No man, hamba la. Hamba.
Nasi spike. Manje macala wena upemayidi sinti sekunje vele.
Ya mina vele sengipemile mina sengizithithile.
Untanga ngajova. Jove thina kuphela mina no speaking. Mawusitshela ukuthi ujove. Usho ukuthi umuntu usipanisa umjovo kamjovo. Yazi untanga uzosikolisa. Yazi.
Yes, I'll get back to you. Thank you, bye.
My sister.
Yini? Ngiyawuzwa ukuthi uyanuka. Ufunani?
Bengisacela amakhono.
Ngikhulumela lapha ngaphandle uyanuka. Ungena kanjani egate? Step out kancane. Ufunani futhi?
Obviously my sister ngifuna amakhondio.
Ngisefanele uteste sizokunika ama-condom. If ungakwazi kuyenza leyo process, angeke sikunika ama-condom.
Ma obviously ngijove ngomjovo kamjovo that's ngifuna amakhondium ukuthi obviously ngatheleli uma baby.
Lo mjovo wakho uyokenza ukuthi ube so uyatshela ukuthi la clinic the only procedure that we can help you with sizokunika i-counseling, sikuteste for HIV and then sizokunika ama-condom.
Yo mara sister la we process eningi kanje. If nawo musa amakhondium nyawabona uyangaya ngiyazivayela.
Ngiyakubona ukuthi uyawabona. If ungakwazi kulandela le process angeke ngikwazi ukukunika. Isitha uyayenza awuyenzi.
Yo my sister ma uyangima.
Yo uyanuka yo.